You. Nice. They can't hear us, can they?
Yes, they can.
Oh, okay. Better hide the
Okay.
pornos and all the dirty talk. Yeah.
Okay, well, we might as well get started then. Get this party started. So welcome back to the Female Disruptors Virtual Summit. My name is Lisa Beyer. I am your host, and I have one of my favorite people in the world, Kat Howell, one of my favorite disruptors, I should say. So Kat and I met, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago through our mastermind, and we have worked together in different capacities and shared personal journeys, very big highs and very big lows. So Kat, when we met, you had an agency, you were like scaling up big time. I helped you with the appear in your docu-series, super ambitious, and like things kind of came to like a big halt. And I'm going to let you tell your story and share where you are today. And the whole topic of today is how to turn play into profit.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I want to start off by saying I'm so appreciative of you having me here and grateful. And thank you for putting this summit together and collecting all these amazing disruptors. So thank you. Thank you. So yeah, you and I have been on a very similar path. It's kind of like we were neck and neck through that entire journey of recreation, rediscovery. And for me, a big part of that was, although I had built a multi-million-dollar company and I was really well respected and check, loving boyfriend, all the things that I could ask for, what was really happening behind the scenes was that I was deeply unfulfilled and I was burning out. I was totally overwhelmed. And the gears that I had shifted to in my business at that time was definitely pushing, coercion, trying to fix. It was always coming from a space of trying to fix problems, trying to put out fires, trying to defend, trying not to have things happen, trying to make sure the payroll expenses could be paid. And maybe this is something that's familiar to a lot of people watching now or listening right now, because so many of us fall into this place of just being deeply anxious, overwhelmed, burnt out, and unfulfilled in our businesses. And unfortunately for me, I didn't really understand emotions in the way that I understand them now. And so my approach to trying to deal with the overwhelm and all of these things I was encountering was to simply hire more staff, take more courses, hire more things, throw more mud at the wall, if you will. And it took a mental breakdown, plainly stated, to basically wipe the slate, push factory reset on what I was doing so that I could reevaluate what was actually happening and reapproach the way that I was operating in the projects and how I was showing up in my businesses and different things that I was involved with. So that's when I sort of had a coming home moment of realizing that not only were my emotions a communication tool, and that reality was just a reflection of whatever I was inputting at that time. So it made no sense in that instance to feel overwhelmed or to feel anxious, because I was just getting more of that back. But I also began to recognize the power in states like flow, play, and appreciation. And my fascination has very much recently grown with these states, because I've come to observe that it is almost, I mean, if you look around us, there's complex systems all over the place that we can see every moment of every second, from photosynthesis to a seed growing into an oak, to the DNA that unfurls and creates us. All of these insanely diverse systems that happen all the time that require no conscious effort from us. And yet we fall into this thinking that pushing and forcing and coercing and effort and exertion and sacrifice is what will get us to where we want. But what has been very obvious to me in the past year and a half, certainly, is that if you look at life, if you look at new life coming into this world, new mammal life coming into this world, so puppies, kittens, I have lambs in my backyard in the paddocks. If you observe young mammals, children in this world, they're just balls of playfulness. They're balls of joy. They're balls of love. They're just super resilient, and they're just in deep flow and play and love and joy and easiness. So life itself comes into this world as play, as love, appreciation, as flow. And it's really only through the failures and the traumas and the rejection and the losses and all these things that we come to then steel ourselves against life. And then we detach from our true nature of play, of love, of these states that we're in. And then we fall into this thinking mentality that we must push, we must coerce to get back to a sense of well-being. But that sense of well-being, that playfulness, is actually your true nature. It's literally the baseline of life if you observe it in all mammals. So that was a really big realization for me, to like a penny dropping of like, okay, so reality is a reflection of me. It's really just the output of whatever I'm putting in. And here I am pushing and sacrificing and committing hard work and effort to get to from point A to point B, so that I can feel a certain way, so that I can feel happy, so that I can feel abundance, so that I can feel well. But really, all along, the sense, the state of play and love is actually my baseline. And if reality is a reflection of me, I must be the one that places myself in this state. So that's sort of how, roundabout way, I came to this realization of the power of play, specifically for entrepreneurs and in the business sense, and how it really unlocks a whole different level of wealth and success and like time to success. It's the ultimate hack in many ways, but it's so counterintuitive, because when you're overwhelmed, your mind is like, you got to do more, I don't have time. And so to go into play is like the most insane thing in that moment, right? So that's why a lot of us just don't follow through on this concept or on these principles.
We've talked about in a couple of the sessions, the word trauma has come up, and being in survival mode for, women are, having expected to be, a mom, a partner, a professional, or entrepreneur, whatever they're doing. There's so many things that we're juggling, and it's almost like you compartmentalize. And you and I talked about this, like you have to really kind of like have the tunnel of the radical transformation. And I realize that now, I can see it, but like when you're going through it, like you don't see that it's like there's going to be the light at the end of the tunnel, and you're going to go back and appreciate where you were, like however bad it was, once you like start working on yourself. And kind of, I don't know if you would describe it as hitting rock bottom. I mean, I feel like that's kind of like what I did.
Yeah, I would say that's a good description of what I've experienced. Yeah, it's really hard to catch yourself in it. It's really, really hard to see your own blind spots. It's really, really difficult. And it happens to me even nowadays, with such awareness around my intuition and my emotions as a communication tool. It's very easy for me to, the rational mind is something that we have given so much weight and power to in our lives. And so when we have fears or doubts or sensations of worthlessness or thoughts around these things, it's literally like we take it as the word of God. We're like, well, this must be true and this is life. And then you're just like in this tunnel, as you said, right? Where you can't see. You can't even like zoom out and see how distorted your perspective is in that state. What I've come to recognize since that rock bottom is that before that, I used to see my emotions as this villain. And I actually wish that I could lobotomize myself from my emotions. So if anyone's had depression before or suicidal thoughts or anxiety, definitely that's maybe something you've thought of as well, right? I'd be better off without these emotions. Fun fact here, they actually lobotomized patients that had brain tumors many years ago, and the part of our brains that holds emotions was lobotomized at the front of the behind the eyes here. And the doctors also thought this would benefit the patients. They're going to be so much better off without emotions. But what they discovered was that actually when you remove people's emotions, you lose the capacity to make decisions, even basic decisions like what to have for breakfast or what to wear. So emotions are actually a decision-making communication tool for that you have. They're serving you, basically. They're a tool that you have, and they're expressing to you new desires, they're expressing to you expansions, and they're also expressing to you when you've kind of gotten off that yellow brick road, when you're not aligned, so to speak, with the perspective that is attached and connected to love, appreciation, and flow. Like you've detached from that. So nowadays, when I begin to feel fears or I begin to feel a dark thought or anxiety or overwhelm, I have a better understanding that there's something that I'm expanding to, or there's a perspective that I'm attached to right now that just isn't serving me. But I'm not going to lie, even when you have this level of awareness, it's still difficult to know what is like to pull yourself out of that. Because I think that's one of the things of depression and anxiety. It's like almost addictive in a way. It sounds weird because you don't want it, but it's like you become hooked to feeling sad and to just like surrendering to this people get addicted to overwhelm. It's crazy to observe that. And as much as they say, I want more time, it's like you put them on a holiday, get rid of their phone, get rid of everything. And what do? They're still going to figure out a way to be overwhelmed, right? We become addicted to these states if we don't snip them in the butt. It just becomes like something we practice. And certainly for me, that was my case. I didn't nip the depression, and not nip it, I didn't acknowledge and make the correct steps that I needed to. For me, that was my intuition. My soul was like, man, I want something new. Like I want something challenging, different. But then my mind was like, yo, Kat, what the hell? You've just built this business. It's doing so well. You're well known. Who the hell walks away from this? How are you going to make money? How are you going to pay your mortgage? And I stayed. So I ignored this guidance. I ignored the depression. And then of course it got progressively worse. And then after a while, it's just like you practice it so much, you become addicted to it. It's just your modus operandus in a way. So it is difficult to catch yourself for certain when you're in those states, because your mind is so convincing. We've given our minds so much power in our lives, right? And I'm not sure if that was your experience as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it got to a point where I was just like going through the motions. I was felt very numb, I think is the way to describe it, where, you know, like conversations were happening and I kind of like really wasn't even able to absorb anymore. I was just like, I couldn't take in anymore. Just like information, emotion overload and not really knowing what to do. But, you know, it's like owning a business, whether it's an agency or you're in a professional situation, it's like going for that promotion, winning that new client, losing the client, not getting something, you know, not getting awarded something, not getting recognition. And you put all this pressure on yourself. And then it's just like this hamster wheel that you're just like, don't know how to get off. And you have to, for me, it was when I started feeling numb is when I realized I needed to make a change, because I wasn't feeling anything happy, sad, or anything, or excited.
Yeah. And I think that's a big problem, is that we have become a society that is so outcome focused. I had a call this week actually with a group of entrepreneurs and a good friend of mine, Jesse Elder, and we were talking about the same thing, is capitalism. The very structure that we live in requires us to chase things outside of ourselves. So we become so outcome focused, and we set such expectations of how things should play and what our launch should look like and how much money we should make, and we compare ourselves, and then we get really deflated or discouraged when things don't pan out exactly the way that we wanted. But this is a really important step of actually embodying well-being, is detachment from those expectations and outcomes, and really only expecting that you're always going to be served at the highest level, that you're always going to be able to connect back to love, play, and flow and well-being, that you are deserving of well-being, and that you are supposed to feel that. Aside from those expectations, everything materialistic or outcome-based, you're asking for trouble. Because, like, here's an example. Let's say that I was like, oh, I really have a crush on this guy called Mike, and I want Mike to marry me and ask me out, and Mike, that's the man. And I'm like manifesting and meditating and affirming and journaling how much I want Mike, and it doesn't happen. And I'm like deflated, and I'm like, this doesn't work, and I'm garbage, and life sucks and all. But what if Mike was an asshole? What if he really was not the right person for you, and that you are serving yourself so much that you refuse to allow yourself to get into a toxic relationship that wasn't good for you? What if, right? So this is the problem we get into when we attach to outcomes, is like, we're forgetting that we know our intuition, this internal system that's already tuned into intelligence all around us, already knows how to get us into a state of well-being. And pushing and expecting like specific things only gets us in trouble, really, at the end of the day. Yeah.
What are some tips that you can share on how to detach? Because detaching is really the key. And that's, I think, like what you just said, it's the hardest thing to do, is to detach, because you're emotionally attached to the outcomes. How do you detach?
Yeah, I think you reattach to your true nature, your baseline. So the real outcomes. Listen, you only want your launch to go well, or your business to grow, or the money to come in, or the client to sign on the line, not because you actually give a shit about those things. You actually don't. You want those things because you think that those things are going to what? Make you feel a certain way about yourself or about life, right? They're going to either give you a sensation of freedom or abundance or easiness or joy. So that's the real end outcome. That's what you really desire. And the best news about that is, like, because the baseline of life itself is love, play, and these states, it is so accessible to you without requiring anything outside of you. You're able to reconnect with that true end outcome. And when you do that, you usually tend to find that your focus on like the specific things tend to just kind of slip away, because you're just trusting, you're surrendering, you're feeling well, you're in that flow. And you also discover when you slip into those states, like play is a very high alchemy state. It's really, really high up there. It's like right up there, just below love, And when you're in a state of play, unconditional play, you find suddenly life just delivers solutions, the right people, the right things. And if a launch went bad, it was because there's a little pivot that made a huge thing on the other side. It's like everything is serving you, even the challenges, even the things that don't work out. But it's hard to recognize that when you're detached from that baseline nature of yourself, right?
Definitely. And we've shared situations, and I shared my daughter Kennedy going through depression and going through that. It's even teenagers and young adults, and kind of going through this. And like you explained to her also that you have to kind of have that experience the darkness to really appreciate the lightness. And she's now in a lighter spot in her life.
So happy to hear. Wow.
Yeah. So what are some tips on accessing that you can share, the light?
Yeah, I'll give you guys some easy tips for play. So play is really the antidote to fear. So all your emotions mirror each other. It's beautiful in that way. And anxiety and fear can really, if you put yourself in states of play and you're feeling anxious and fearful right now, it's going to greatly benefit you. I'm not saying that right away you're going to unlock like, oh, I'm enlightened, but it's going to give you the foothold, the respite in your emotional state to be able to work yourself back up. So play is the remedy to these states. So easy things. Here's the great news. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between an emotion, a state felt through something that came because of a business result, or something that you're doing recreationally, or even something that you are thinking of in your mind, right? When you're stressed and you got fears of things that haven't even happened, you're pumping cortisol through your nervous system. So it can't tell. So just by going into play in normal day-to-day life, by default, will teach your nervous system that state, and it will overspill in every area. So things that get me in play, the ocean. I love going in the ocean and like playing with the waves. My children, and obviously dogs and those kinds of things. Another thing that I sometimes do when I need to like detach from fear or have a lot of anxiety is I'll just find a swing set and I'll just swing there for 10 minutes and like kids do, like throw your legs up and then like swing back, and just like carelessness. You can also use your imagination. So think of moments when you were in play, of times in your life when you had this sensation in your body, and bring it back into you. And the more you teach yourself this, the more you put yourself in play, the more you teach your nervous system. And the more you practice it, the more you become addicted to practicing that state. So it becomes easier and easier to keep yourself there and to maintain it. And what gets you in play is unique and different to everyone. So discover that, date yourself, go have fun. It's counterintuitive, especially if you're overwhelmed, but it's going to completely change your life.
Anna was on earlier, so she was talking about, what, I'm just going to use her example of, she didn't say this, but like what play isn't that you're talking about, play isn't going and having a drink. Alcohol is not going to put you in the state of play, correct?
Not really, because it's a depressant, right? Alcohol?
Right, yeah. That's what she was saying, is that her friends were trying to help her and they were like, hey, let's go out and have a drink and let's get social, but that really wasn't helping her because she was depressed and wanted interaction and play, let's say, but like that wasn't the type of play. So, playing doesn't necessarily mean like going out and drinking, but playing means like, all the examples that you
play is a lightness of being where you are cheeky, you can laugh at yourself, you can laugh at your flaws, you're also focused and you're resilient to fear. So for example, when you're bungee jumping, you might have some fears, but you get over it and you're like, woohoo. And so it really is the antidote to fear and anxieties, and it's a really high state to be in. It's just a lightness of being. So comedies can do that. Many things can bring this lightness. It's joy. That's probably a good word for it as well, right? Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. So we have like one minute, maybe one more. If you can just bring us up to date, like how can people connect with you? What are you doing now? That is, you seem very happy and joyful and.
Yeah. Yes. So I am working on a new project of mine, which has been deeply in play, deeply in flow, deeply in appreciation. And these are protocols that I'm sharing with entrepreneurs on how to enter these states and how to sustain and put yourself in that. And if you would like to learn more about that, you can check out theflowprotocols.com. And also I have a free Facebook group, the Flow Protocols, where I share a lot of those protocols in there.
Awesome. Well, Kat, thank you so much. It's so great to catch up with you, coming all the way from New Zealand. And I hope that we're going to see each other someplace physically in the near future, like Mexico, or I don't know what you're planning, but I'll be there, or I'll come to see you in New Zealand.
Yeah. Well, if New Zealand opens our borders, but yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I love it. And thank you so much, Lisa, for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for being a female disruptor.
Yeah.
Okay. Enjoy some more sessions. Bye, everybody.